How do you say no at work? Can you say no at work? Can you say no to clients, partners, managers? How do we set boundaries? Today, we're going to talk to an expert on how to set business boundaries right here on Strategy Talks. If you're ready, join us. I'll be right back.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Strategy Talks. Another week, another expert is here. We're going to do some heavy thinking on setting business boundaries. So without much further ado, I'm going to bring onto the stage with me my good friend, Lisa Danforth. How are you, Lisa?
I am fantastic. Thanks, Doreen. I'm excited to be talking boundaries.
I know. And I have learned so much that so many things about boundaries that I've applied to both my personal and my business life. But we're going to talk about business today. So let's dive right in. So what are some common business boundaries that entrepreneurs or business owners often struggle with, and how can they begin establishing some boundaries effectively?
That is such a great question. And I also want to jump in and say, often when we start building boundaries, whether it's in our personal life or our professional life, it really helps out in both, right? We're flexing that muscle. So when we bring them into the business, more than likely it's going to help us in our personal life as well. But as far as entrepreneurs go, I think one of the struggles that I see, and I have certainly experienced, and I'm going to bet you have as well, is especially when we start out, we want to say yes to everything and everyone, and really just it almost becoming a generalist, but an overworked generalist. So I think one of the biggest boundaries is boundaries with ourselves, right? What are we willing to say yes to? How much is enough? How many hours do I want to work? Success loves clarity. And that also runs with boundaries as well. So when we want to establish boundaries and be able to manage our time and our energy, it's not just time, we have to be clear on what success looks like how many hours am I willing to invest? Who are my ideal clients? And having the ability to say no to the clients that are out of alignment, because when we say yes to clients that aren't within our expertise or that we don't really want to work with, but we just want to have a client, that really takes our attention, our energy, our focus away from building the business that we want to the success that we want when we're saying yes to everything. So again, those boundaries really start with ourselves and being true and authentic to ourselves and honest with ourselves of saying, I'm only saying yes because I feel like I need to make the sale, and leaving the space open for that perfect client or more aligned client to come in.
All right. So I'm going to go completely off script. I know I showed you some of the questions, but I have this feeling you're talking about this. And I have this feeling there's going to be some people watching and listening to Strategy Talks as a podcast that are going to be like, oh, this is so me. I can't say no to anything. I don't know how to set these boundaries. I didn't even know I had to set them. How does somebody that is afraid or is worried about consequences or negativity or pushback, how do we frame that as the mindset? What can you say to somebody? What is the outcome when this starts happening? I know we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, but somebody's going to sit here and go, oh my gosh, I need this, but yeah, there's no way I can do this. Right. What can you tell them that could happen?
That's an excellent question, because that's what I get pushback all the time is I can't set boundaries. Oh, I feel so mean. I feel so aggressive. I feel so whatever it is. First thing, your attention is solely on you, right? So what I want people to know is studies show that the people who are the most compassionate, studies show this, are also the most boundaried. The reason is because we're not saying yes to things that we don't want and then being resentful, or saying no to the things that we want to do and being resentful because how dare they ask us? I mean, how many here have actually been asked to do something, you say yes, and then you walk away and you're like, I can't believe they asked me to do that. This is the self boundaries, right? So understand, to connect to, you are building healthy relationships, not only a healthy aligned business, but you are building healthy relationships when you have clear, effective boundaries. It is your responsibility to speak up and set your boundary and to be clear on it, right? It's not somebody else's responsibility. And those boundaries are solely for you, so that you can build an aligned business, so that you can have energy and joy at the end of the day instead of feeling like the life is sucked out of you. So to go back to what I had said in the beginning, success loves clarity. What does success look like to you? If I'm saying yes to this one person, is this moving me closer to my goals? Is this moving me closer to the person that I want to be, to the income that I want to make? The key here in everything is pause, the habit of pause, so that you can connect your short-term action, your short-term yes or no, to the longer-term vision of the person that you want and need to be to achieve your dreams and your goals and that life you want to live.
All right. So, Lisa, how do we say no to somebody who pays us money? How about scope creep, right? We have clients, we have a contract, we have a scope of work, and then you love this client and you work with them. I'm talking about marketing, right? Because there's a lot of marketers that are watching this. And then, can you do this one flyer? Can you do a couple extra posts this month? Can you throw in a strategy for Q3? Can you look at the analytics for us, right? We've all heard all of these questions. How do we address that scope creep, especially if somebody has already been allowing it for a while? How can we get back to, here's the contract, here's the scope? What is a good way to approach that?
Such a solid question. And it can be so difficult. Very simple, but it's not easy. And this is where we can get tripped up. The thing that I recommend, and this may sound a little woo-woo, is give the gift of transparency in any relationship that you're in. I know that I've always added on a little bit extra here and a little bit extra there. I've always been willing to, throw in a Q3 strategy for you. But what I'm finding is it's no longer working for me. And I'm happy that I've been able to do that in the past. But I want to be able to have a conversation with you so that we can make sure that this is working for the both of us. So, do you have time to chat? Set up a time to speak with them, right? Give the gift of transparency, because this is where that resentment builds in. And then you let go of a client that you would like to continue working with because you haven't done the work to speak up and communicate how to effectively work with you. Again, give the gift of transparency, but also understand that you're building healthy relationships. And I would invite you to really ponder the money, yes, and you very well may need it, and it may be an intentional choice. But do you really want to work with someone who is going to continually push the edges and want to take advantage of you? They're taking up your energy, your space, your vibrancy, and the ability to go out and search for other ideal clients. So get clear on what you are willing to do and what you're not. And then also, if you're just starting out, and even if you have all these established clients, when you bring on new clients, set the boundaries in the contract. Here's the scope of work. It's up to 20 hours per week. Anything over that is billed in an hourly increment, not 15-minute increment, or maybe that's what you want, but I say hourly because it's enough of a ding that they're going to think twice before just saying, oh yeah, just add it to your plate, add it to your plate. So have that clarity of boundaries within the contract and point it out and be like, we can work together. There's always times that we can be flexible, but I have found that it's most effective for a healthy relationship between client and myself to be clear on what the scope of work is. And then when it does creep up, be really clear. Hey, I'd love to be able to add this to my plate. I'm really busy this next week. I can add it next week, but it's out of the scope. So that'll be another 3 hours, which would be X amount. So I'd love to do it. Would you like me to schedule it? Mm-hmm. You're giving them the option to say no. You're being really transparent with your worth, and you're establishing it, and you're unapologetic about it.
I think that is the main point, and I think that so many of us would lead that, and a lot of us are conditioned to say, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'd have to charge you for it." No, that's I love what you just said. So let's go into emotional intelligence, right? So how can we as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as professionals develop that emotional intelligence to really work on those boundaries? What do we need to do for ourselves to be strong, to set that? Is there anything we can do? Is there any practice we can have, or anything we need to learn?
Yeah, I mean, emotional intelligence, I'm not an expert in it, but I will say that body language is going to be really important to be able to see those cues of how people are approaching you, what the stance is, but also your own cues as well. We all have intuition, whether we feel it, sense it, or receive it, right? So we often know ahead of time when we get something that's a little bit off. Trust that. I'm not saying act on it immediately, but just take a note, right? So that emotional intelligence is being able to read people, being able to meet people where they're at. Again, sometimes this is going to require you to take a pause. Hey, can I circle back around to you? Because you can't quite figure out what's going on and you need to have that clarity. But being aware of how someone is speaking to you, with you, what their body language is saying, what they're saying, but what you're picking up. But also be very aware of your lens that you bring to the conversation. We all have a different lens. So you may be triggered by someone being very clear and direct, which you and I both are, right? Because you had a parent or a teacher that continued to scold you in that way. So it's a trigger that goes on, so that emotional intelligence within ourselves of seeing where we might be being triggered, and tease that out a little bit and understand, have some compassionate curiosity for yourself. Why is this triggering me, or why is this person triggering me? And see if you can come up with a plan that works for you. And if you don't, then that's another conversation to be had of they're probably not an ideal client for you.
Yeah. All right. Let's shift to time management, Lisa. So, you and I both are in Vermont. There's all kinds of opportunities to be on a board, to volunteer at conferences, to show up and do things for free, or to do things for a low rate. And, I'm assuming it's like this for everybody. We just happen to be in the same area, and we've discussed this before. So time management, when you're being asked to do something that is not going to move your business forward immediately, that takes time away from your business, but also from your family, how do we set those boundaries in a way that doesn't alienate people or make you the outcast, say, in your network? How do we do this?
Again, you're coming up with some amazing questions. I love absolutely all of these. The first thing I really want to invite people to do is to connect to your self-trust. When we continue to say yes to other people and no to ourselves, no to our family, no to our financial security and our financial independence, we are starting to chip away at the trust that we have within ourselves to be who we need to be, to build the business that we want to have. So that's what I want you to have. Lean into that self-trust, because once that, it's almost like a snowball effect. When you start saying yes, it's just like, be really clear in if it's in alignment with your core values. I do a core values assessment. If anyone wants one, they can just DM me or whatever, and I'm happy to just send it to you so you can figure it out. Because when we make choices in alignment with our core values, it's going to be a better outcome for you. Just a quick example so I have a non-alcoholic bar service. I get a lot of nonprofits that reach out. It's great visibility. I don't need visibility, isn't going to pay the bills, right? So what I've done is said, I have a minimum in order to do a cash bar. So are there some minimum things that you can do or you can receive and that you would feel comfortable with in saying yes to? Know what your non-negotiables are. Know what a baseline is. I don't do anything for under 500 or without a list of 10,000 people, whatever it is. Be clear on what success would look like for you if you were to say yes to this visibility offer or low paying offer. And again, pause, because sometimes we don't particularly want to do something because we're so busy, but it is in full alignment with what lights us up, the people that we want to support. So sometimes we say yes, knowing that we're going to have to figure it out, and it's not going to necessarily be easy. But the thing with that is it is an intentional yes, not a reactive yes.
Yeah.
And here's what I also want people to understand. You have the ability to change your mind. It's super uncomfortable, but if you've said yes to something and it just isn't going to fit in, and you're going to miss your child's soccer game again when you've promised them that you would show up, right? If you are going to be losing sleep or you can't go on the vacation, whatever it may be, you can just say, hey, I know I said yes, but what I'm finding is it really doesn't fit into my schedule. So you can either back off or you can just say no. Not always an easy one, but I just want people to understand you have the right to change your mind. You do.
I appreciate that so much. And I'm going to use an example that just happened to me. I moved to a small town in Vermont over 5 years ago. And very quickly, I was asked to be on the board of trustees of the library. And at that time, my business was really taking off. I was, of course, had moved. And so I said no. And then 2 years later, I was asked again by another board member. And I, again, was, no, I didn't have time. And so this year, when in February, I got an email from a third board member, I immediately said yes, because I knew the timing was right. I had come to the realization that I really needed to meet more people in my town. I'd been here 5 years and I really needed to connect. And now this was a very clear yes for me. So understanding and knowing not just what you give, but what you get back when you do that, I think is really important, Lisa. I think this is definitely something there's going to be somebody watching this or listening to this and going, aha, now I know how to do this. So I love this conversation.
Can I jump in real quick before you ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
You're going to screw it up. You're going to set a boundary that's too firm because you've been too, porous over here, right? We need flexible boundaries. We can have porous boundaries, which really are not boundaries, right? We can have very firm boundaries, which can make us rigid and not particularly great to work with or to be around. What we're looking for are flexible boundaries. Even the people that you may not really need boundaries with, every now and then, you might need to set a boundary, right? So understand that your boundaries can be flexible. They don't have to be all rigid or porous, that you get to choose.
Okay. So then how do we deal with a boundary that you said that is constantly tested or violated, right? Mm-hmm. So what steps can somebody take to reinforce their boundaries without really escalating the situation to a point where I said no 5 times and, having an all out, screaming match or, getting upset or having or a broken relationship with somebody. And in business that can have far-fetching consequences, of course. So how do you hold? I guess that's the question. How do you hold when they're constantly pushing at you over and they're just not getting the message?
I'm going to give a very simple answer, but it is so not easy. Be succinct. We've talked about this 5 different times, and my answer has been no. Help me understand what it is that you're not clear on. And then zip it, right? And it's not like, help me understand what you're not clear on. It's, hey, help me understand. I have said no. I've been super clear, but I'm sensing that you're not getting what I'm saying. So help me understand what you need to understand that this is out of my scope of work. That my answer is going to be no. Showing up empathetically, right? Showing up and being curious, showing up without aggression, because if you've got aggression, the other person is going to be, and then you could really ruin that relationship. But here's the thing, you don't always have to respond, right? You can say, hey, we're going to circle back. Would love to continue this conversation, but I'm sensing it's really escalating. Let's circle back around next week after we both have sort of cooled off and approach this again. You get to make that choice. You get to say, I'm hanging up now. If the other person is screaming or continuing to talk, you don't have to stay on the line or stay in that conversation. But you get to say no and be super clear on what you're willing to do. But the key here is to pause before reacting. And when you do speak, try your best to be as succinct and respectful as possible and zip it. Let them sit in the discomfort of you not explaining things.
All right. I absolutely love that. All right. What do you say to somebody who feels guilty? How can they reframe maybe a mindset to see that boundary setting? Because I know that, and I've learned that from you, Lisa. The boundary setting is a positive thing. But, guilt's real. And when the first time you say no to somebody who really is begging you or seems to have always can't do it without you, how does somebody shift that mindset? Any advice for somebody like that?
Guilt is real. Like it's felt within our body, right? We're feeling rejection if we say no. We're going to look mean. We're not going to be able to be successful. They're going to talk crap about us, whatever it may be. And that may be so. You do not have control over what other people say. You do have control over your actions and your reaction. So again, be super clear on what does this relationship, what are you getting from this relationship? What do you want from this relationship? But also pause and circle back to understanding that, again, the most compassionate people are also the most boundaried. One of the healthiest things you can do for any relationship, including with yourself, is to have clear, direct, effective boundaries because you're removing resentment. So pause and get clear on who you want to be. And if this relationship, are you literally giving your power and your worth to someone else who does not respect you, your boundaries, your worth? I'll give a quick example. I had a client who had a very hard time raising rates, which I'm going to bet a lot of people in this that are watching very well may struggle with that. She had such a hard time. She kept saying she was going to raise the rates, and she hadn't raised them in 2 or 3 years. I finally said, what I want you to do is visualize. Each time that you add a new client and don't use the new rates that we've discussed, or that you say you're going to speak out to someone, I want you to literally visualize taking food off from your child's plate and handing it to them, because that is specifically what you are doing, is you are willing to choose to take money out of your family budget to not own your worth because this person doesn't want to pay you more, or you just simply haven't asked. We are making financial decisions for other people when we say they can't afford it or they won't pay. You don't have that power. They are going to make their own financial decisions. And here's the thing. They are going to honor your worth when you honor your worth. So find something that is more distasteful to you, like taking food off your child's plate and literally handing it to someone else, more distasteful than having that conversation about boundaries. Be clear in the outcome that you want from that conversation. Don't just go in willy-nilly. What's success going to look like? How do you want to feel while you're having this conversation? How do you want the other person to feel while having this conversation? While you're not in control, you do have influence on how they feel by how you show up and how you're talking. So when you stand in your brilliance and you stand in your confidence and you stand in your worth and you come from there and you don't talk nonstop because you're clear on the message that you're trying to convey, that is all you can do. And be clear on what are your non-negotiables, who do you want to work with, and how do you want to feel about yourself.
I love this, and I've used this, and it works. When you play it all out, when you plan it all out, and you are clear on what you want and what you need and what your value is, that really, really works to have that conversation. Lisa, looking ahead, we're in the age of AI. Are we becoming less human? Are AI becoming more human? Right? What trends or shifts do we see in how businesses approach boundary setting, and how can we prepare to adapt to a rapidly changing business environment where AI is coming in and, oh, well, if you're not going to do it, they can do it. Or, just like, I'm not going to pay you because, AI could do it faster, or, any of those things. How can we prepare? What should we say? What should we work on? Any advice for us?
Yeah. AI is definitely taking over a lot. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But what they cannot take over are the human skills. What they cannot take over are, like, I look at you and you are so brilliant at strategy. You are so damn creative. It blows my mind. Now, yes, AI can be creative, but you're going to be able to connect with your client at a level that some technology can't. So human skills, soft skills, hard skills, whatever you want to call them, are going to be your best tool to bring to the table, right? Your emotional intelligence. AI cannot bring emotional intelligence. AI doesn't necessarily remember that your cousin is not feeling well and that you're going to have to be traveling. So I want to make sure that we have everything prepared ahead of time, right? Be that person that brings themselves with boundaries, right? But the human skills and boundaries are very much a part of human skills. When you learn to communicate effectively, people are going to want to work with you because they're going to know what to expect from you. They're going to know your boundaries. They're going to know that you respect and honor yourself, so they can trust you because you trust yourself and your choices and your decisions.
That's really great. Wow. All right. I have one more question for you. You earlier specified an instance where you had a client who wasn't really taking your advice until you made her visualize it. It was 2 or 3 years. You're working with her. She didn't want to raise her rate. Do you have an example of somebody that you know or somebody that you've worked with, or maybe in your own business, where setting those boundaries actually paid off big time? Like paid off, like, like I held this boundary and all of a sudden I got paid what I was worth, or, I got the job that I wanted, or something that we can take home and end this on a really positive note. Because, especially women, and I know we haven't made this about women versus men. I know that's not the conversation, but if you're listening and have been watching and you're staying till we're at minute 26, 27, you know that this is something women struggle with a lot more, boundary setting, than men. So to the women out there who are struggling with this, give us a positive example, if you can, of where upholding a boundary in business really led to great success.
I am going to lead off from the story that I told. When this person came to me, one of her core things that she wanted to change about herself and her business was to avoid the overdraft fees. As she started raising her rates, every single, actually only one person gave her pushback, which was someone that she didn't even like working with and was a total thorn in her side. So she was like, well, that's just a beautiful thing. Thank you very much. Everyone else thanked her and wrote a check. There was no one that she wanted to work with that didn't say yes or just simply write the check and put thank you on the check. So she went from wanting to avoid overdraft fees to us discussing how to have an owner-independent business, which she didn't think that she could have. And she really gave pushback. I said, look, we can work to get enough employees working with you that you can choose to be owner-independent, or you can choose to stay in it. She is now working, I think, like 8 hours a week, making way more money than probably 10x what she was making, and has a team because she honored who she is. She honored the worth that she brings to the table. She received that her brilliance, and she's starting to see how important she is in her company and in her clients' businesses, because she truly has changed their lives. She's able to now have a business that pays her when she works a few hours a day. It's really impressive from one to the next, because she decided to honor her worth, understand that, you can make a choice and go down that path and see how it works. And she decided to just run with it, and it's been successful. Will that work for everyone? It'll work for everyone, but it does take work to be able to trust yourself, set the boundaries, own your worth, own your brilliance, and put yourself out there.
Perfect. Okay. You mentioned core values and you have an assessment, Lisa. I'm going to put that for those of you who listen to that. I'm going to definitely have that link in the show notes, so you'll be able to get that. Lisa, where are you most active on social media, and where should people connect with you?
Thank you for asking. I'm most active on LinkedIn, which is just Lisa Danforth. Got in there early enough. I didn't have to have numbers or anything after it. And they can just reach out, either DM or email me at lisadanforth.com. I like to keep things simple.
Wonderful. Well, I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Lisa, I love talking to you about boundaries. I admire you and your message, especially empowering women mostly through this boundary setting and giving them hope, but also confidence to stand up for themselves, with themselves, and, taking the power back, because I think that's what we do. We hand the power to somebody else when we don't set those boundaries. And especially in business, that's definitely a tough one. And the younger women, the younger we are, the harder it is. But as I've gotten older, it's a little bit easier for me to do that. And I know there are young women out there who can, do that and be true to themselves. But I love this episode. I love everything that you've shared. And if you stay to the end, please reach out to Lisa. She's got a lot more where this is coming from. And like I said, I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Bye, everybody.